How to lose weight if I can't stop eating certain foods? Is there a way to lose fat without completely giving up those foods that are so hard to let go of? In this video, we will explore an approach that is rarely mentioned, a protocol designed for those addicted to sweets, pasta, sodas, and other difficult-to-avoid foods. This method is based on a set of practical and sustainable strategies that will allow you to lose weight without needing to exercise or completely eliminate those foods that usually sabotage other weight loss plans. It is a minimalist and easy-to-follow system, but effective enough to help you lose up to 9 kilograms, 20 pounds, of fat in a short amount of time. The best part is that you can apply it regardless of your goal, whether you're overweight and want to reduce fat, or if you're aiming for body recomposition to define your muscles. In general, we all want less fat and more muscle, and this method is one of the easiest ways to achieve that. Losing 9 kilograms, or 20 pounds, usually means dropping 2 clothing sizes, and the rules to achieve it are neither complicated nor expensive. In fact, the most effective protocols in medicine, whether for gaining muscle mass, improving longevity, or reducing fat, have something in common. They are simple and sustainable in the long term. And this is no exception. There are 3 main ways to reduce body fat: using supplements or drugs, increasing physical activity, and, of course, improving our diet, which is the focus we'll be discussing today. The first fundamental step is to eliminate white carbohydrates, meaning those that can be bleached, such as potatoes, rice, even whole grain, cereals, pasta, corn and its derivatives, like corn tortillas, as well as fried foods with breading. If you've been following my content, you already know that these foods have a high glycemic index, which means they release sugar rapidly into the body, promoting fat storage. However, the problem is not only the glycemic index. Many flour bleaching processes and other products use chlorine dioxide or oxidation methods that produce a substance called alloxan. In fact, alloxan has been detected in up to 24% of the flours analyzed. Why is this concerning? Because alloxan is used in scientific studies to induce diabetes in mice, which also leads them to gain weight. Therefore, by consuming bleached carbohydrates, we not only raise insulin levels and promote fat storage due to excess sugar, but we may also be increasing the risk of developing issues with blood sugar regulation, which in turn facilitates the increase of body fat. The second fundamental step is to avoid consuming calories in liquid form. Most of the excess calories that make us gain weight come from what we drink, not from what we eat. Companies that produce sugary drinks add caffeine, which is diuretic, to increase thirst and encourage more consumption. They also add sodium to balance out the extreme amount of sugar and prevent the sweet taste from becoming overwhelming, which in turn also causes more thirst. As a result, these drinks not only have a high glycemic index but can also lead to addiction. The best strategy to reduce the desire to consume sugary drinks? Drink large amounts of water. Personally, I found it helpful to drink sparkling water with a pinch of lemon and salt. Served in a glass with ice and lemon, this mixture gave the feeling of consuming something more sophisticated than just water, which is a psychological effect that can help make the transition easier. What about zero or diet drinks? If you didn't know, most artificial sweeteners can trigger a response in the body that stimulates fat accumulation and even makes it harder to burn fat. For this reason, the ideal strategy is to completely eliminate the consumption of sugary drinks, regardless of whether they contain sugar or artificial sweeteners. And what about alcohol? The typical excuse of a glass of wine at night is something I've heard countless times. The reality is that, from a caloric standpoint, alcohol is costly. It doesn't provide nutrients but contains 7 kilocalories per gram, which equals about 100 kilocalories per glass of wine. This means that if you don't burn that energy, your body could store it as roughly 10 grams of extra fat. And if this is repeated daily, the impact is even greater. While alcohol has certain benefits, especially at the cardiovascular level, the current problem is that we tend to consume more calories than we need. Therefore, if we want to optimize our long-term nutrition, every calorie we consume should be well justified. It doesn't mean you need to eliminate alcohol completely, but on days when you follow a more controlled diet, its consumption should be very moderate. In summary, the less you drink, the better. And if you can avoid it entirely, the whole fat loss process will be much easier. What about fruit? We tend to associate it with healthy eating and diets, and even nutritional guidelines recommend several servings per day. However, this idea is not entirely accurate for several reasons. To begin with, it is true that fruits contain vitamins, minerals, and other essential nutrients, but the same is true for vegetables, with the added benefit that vegetables do not contain large amounts of fructose. We can obtain the same nutritional benefits without the drawbacks of the high sugar content found in many modern fruits, which have been modified over generations to increase their sweetness. In the past, fruits contained more fiber and fewer simple sugars, which affected their glycemic index. Therefore, if we are going to consume fruit, it is recommended to choose those with a low glycemic index. Additionally, from an evolutionary perspective, humans did not consume fruit year-round, but only when it was available, typically in the summer. This is relevant because its consumption coincided with periods of greater physical activity, which helped burn the energy derived from the natural sugars. A fundamental aspect you need to understand is that fructose, the sugar present in fruits, has a less efficient metabolism than glucose. Unlike glucose, our body cannot use fructose directly, so it must transform it into another substance. Unfortunately, one of the easiest conversions is into glycerol, which combines with fatty acids to form triglycerides, essentially body fat. For this reason, consuming fructose along with fats that release fatty acids creates the perfect scenario for fat gain. However, not all fruits affect the body in the same way. Some foods that we don't typically consider fruits, such as tomatoes and avocados, have a lower impact on blood glucose levels, meaning their consumption does not cause the same metabolic fluctuations. To make better decisions, it is useful to rely on the glycemic index of foods. Another key but often overlooked concept is the repetition of effective meals. It's not just about nutritional variety or avoiding nutrient deficiencies, but about making habit changes easier to maintain. The simpler the diet, the more sustainable it will be in the long term. Consider this. An average supermarket carries over 40,000 products, but most of them do not support weight loss. People who successfully maintain their diet usually limit the number of meals they consume regularly. This applies not only to those trying to lose weight but also to those looking to build muscle or improve longevity. That's why you should think of this approach as the basic level for weight loss. There's no need to complicate things with advanced strategies like intermittent fasting or interval training from the start. If you want to incorporate them later, that's great, but the most important thing is to begin with simple and sustainable steps. To simplify your diet, choose one protein source per meal. It can be eggs, beef, chicken, fish, pork, or any other option you prefer. The key is that it should be accessible, affordable, and easy to maintain in the long run. Always pair it with vegetables, prioritizing leafy greens, especially bitter ones, as they help reduce hunger. This is because bitter flavors act as a natural signal to the body, warning against potentially harmful substances, which in turn decreases appetite. It's also advisable to include cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts, as well as vegetables rich in inulin, such as asparagus and artichokes. These help stabilize blood sugar levels and support a healthy gut microbiome. If you're looking to increase your protein intake without relying solely on animal-based foods, incorporate legumes like beans and lentils. These not only provide additional protein but also supply essential nutrients, particularly if you need to moderate your intake of saturated fats and cholesterol. And if you're concerned about digestive issues like gas, there are ways to mitigate them, which we'll discuss later. The goal is to combine ingredients from these three groups for your main meals, lunch, and dinner, in the most practical way for you. It's not a perfect diet, but it is a simple and sustainable approach over time. To make things even easier, I recommend creating a list of 10 standardized meals. This way, you'll know exactly what to eat, what to buy, and how to prepare it without overthinking. Why is this important? Because people often resort to fast food or unhealthy options when they come home tired and without a plan. Eliminating the need to make decisions in that moment will help you maintain a healthy diet without relying solely on willpower. Once you have your 10 healthy meals planned with these combinations, they may not be nutritionally perfect, and some nutrients might be missing, but you'll still be better nourished than 95% of the population. Most importantly, it will be easy to maintain. Now, how much should you eat? As much as you need. Use common sense. If you're hungrier, eat more. With these foods, it's difficult to gain weight because it would take a massive caloric surplus to do so. If you don't want to worry about meal distribution and prefer a structured guide, don't worry, there are simple ways to organize it without complications. A simple and effective meal plan could be having breakfast at 9 a.m. with one of the recommended options, lunch at 12 p.m., a light meal at 4 or 5 p.m. if you're doing intense exercise, and finally, dinner at least 2 hours before bed. Meal examples. Breakfast, scrambled eggs with avocado and beans. Lunch, meat with salad and cruciferous vegetables. Dinner, fish with lentils and salad. The key is to keep meals practical and sustainable, without the need for complicated or overwhelming preparations. Small variations can be made for more variety, but without making the plan harder to follow. What about food addictions? This approach works even if you struggle with cravings because it allows for a free day to enjoy those foods. If you feel you still can't completely give up sweets, pasta, or processed foods, you can include them one day a week. Most people choose a weekend day for this. And here's the important part. Don't count calories that day. If you're going to indulge, do it without restrictions. Eat as much as you want of those foods. Interestingly, many people experience reduced cravings for the rest of the week after a day like this. While this may not be the fastest strategy for fat loss, it is one of the most sustainable in the long run. The third rule regarding the consumption of addictive foods is to give your body a couple of days of good nutrition before eating what you consider junk food. Ideally, you should prepare at least 5 days before your indulgence day. This means that if you plan to eat those foods on Saturday, you should start this process on Monday. The goal is to normalize and stabilize your glucose levels and prevent insulin from spiking too much during those days. Fourth, it's important to understand that carbohydrates attract water. Each glycogen molecule can bind to multiple water molecules, so it's normal to see weight fluctuations after eating junk food. Don't worry, most of that weight gain is water and will naturally drop in the following days, simply because you won't continue eating those foods. The fifth key point to consider is that eating junk food once a week does not harm your metabolism. In fact, excessively restricting calories or completely avoiding carbohydrates can slow down your metabolism and negatively impact your thyroid function. Paradoxically, indulging occasionally helps keep your metabolism active and supports continued fat burning, making this process more sustainable in the long run, both physically and emotionally. Although it's not the fastest way, I have never seen this approach fail when followed correctly. The key principles are: avoid white carbohydrates. Don't drink calories. Don't overconsume fruit. Repeat the meals that work for you. Use a cheat day or junk food day. If this video motivates you to start, make your shopping list and choose 10 easy-to-prepare recipes that you find tolerable. Follow this plan as best as you can, and for those with doubts, let's address them now. In low-carb diets, it's common to feel low energy. One of the reasons for this is that carbohydrates are a significant source of energy and calories, much more than we usually realize. When we have insulin resistance and struggle to burn fat, we often fail to obtain energy from sources other than carbohydrates, which contributes to weight gain. To put it into perspective, 30 grams of rice can have 300 calories, while 30 grams of spinach have only 15 calories. That's 20 times less energy in the same amount of food. This is why people who used to base their diet on carbohydrates often experience low energy levels when cutting them out. To prevent this, I recommend including legumes in your diet, as they help maintain a more stable level of carbohydrates and glucose throughout the day, reducing energy crashes. If this approach seems too strict or if you struggle to maintain it because you've always had difficulties with food, don't worry, I won't leave you alone. If you're not doing intermittent fasting, you can start by changing just one meal per day. Begin with breakfast and don't touch the other meals. Replace breakfast with something that includes protein, some fat, and, if you want, some carbohydrates using legumes. If you're already doing intermittent fasting and find it hard to follow the rest of the steps, simply start by avoiding liquid calories. Stick to either of these two changes until you feel comfortable, and only then move on to the next step. Don't worry if it takes you months to adapt. The important thing to remember is that you've been eating poorly for years, and improving is a long process, not a short race. What to do if you have a strong craving for junk food? If you crave something midweek, write it down and save it for your free meals day. That way, you can enjoy that craving knowing you'll eat it on the day you chose, like Saturday. What about boredom with the same 10 recipes or the lack of variety in the diet? People often overestimate how much variety they actually have in their daily diet. In reality, we don't eat as many different foods as we think. If you're going to eat more simply, at least make sure you're getting a healthier body in the process. Save the variety for your free day. There's no problem with increasing food variety or recipes as long as it doesn't make the diet harder to maintain long-term. You can season your food, use spices and calorie-free condiments. They're all welcome. It's just a matter of learning how to use them. Regarding oils, remember that olive oil should only be used raw, not for cooking. Additionally, many oils oxidize when heated, which can cause chronic inflammation in the body. This inflammation makes it harder for your body to use fat as an energy source. The best oils for cooking are those richest in saturated fats since they are more stable at high temperatures. For example, you can use coconut oil, avocado oil, although it is more expensive, or macadamia oil, which is high in monounsaturated fats. This makes it less harmful to cholesterol and less inflammatory, though it is also more costly. If you don't have cholesterol issues, clarified butter, ghee, is also a good option. Regarding alcohol, many people use alcohol in moderation for relaxation, especially during stressful times. There is nothing wrong with using it in a non-addictive way, but I suggest saving it for your free days. On regular days, it's best to avoid alcohol for caloric reasons, except for small amounts of wine with low residual sugar content, less than 1.4%. Regarding snacks, if you constantly feel the need for snacks, you can rely on nuts and seeds, as mentioned earlier. However, if you're eating adequate portions during your main meals, you shouldn't need to snack between meals. If this happens, you are probably eating too little or not consuming enough protein. Try increasing your protein intake and see how it affects your hunger between meals. If you prefer to change one meal at a time, I suggest starting with breakfast, as consuming more than 30% protein in the morning has been shown to boost metabolism in both men and women. If your goal is to lose weight quickly, keep in mind that skipping cheat days is not always advisable. Men can skip these days and lose fat faster, but for women of childbearing age, this is not ideal. It's important to eat more occasionally to stimulate metabolism. If we don't, we may create a hormonal barrier to weight loss, an easy mistake to avoid. You can have what you consider junk food once a week, or if you prefer to avoid these foods, simply increase your carbohydrate intake on one day instead. You might wonder why dairy is not included in this plan. While dairy products have a low glycemic index and don't significantly impact blood glucose levels, they do stimulate insulin and something called IGF-1, which promotes anabolism. This is why they are widely used in bodybuilding. Regarding gas when consuming legumes, this is generally due to oligosaccharides such as fructooligosaccharides and xylooligosaccharides, which are soluble fibers. When you eat them, you are feeding gut bacteria that are not yet accustomed to these foods. The solution is to introduce probiotics into your diet to improve gut flora, which should reduce the likelihood of gas. If that doesn't help, you can soak legumes in water with a bit of salt for several hours or combine them with seaweed, such as kombu, which helps reduce these symptoms. In summary, gas occurs when there are imbalances in gut bacteria, but over time, as you maintain this diet, your gut flora will adapt. And if you'd like, you can add other tools like HIIT, intermittent fasting, aerobic exercises in the fat-burning zone, or biohacking techniques to accelerate weight loss. Of course, these can be useful, but I mention this because the focus of this plan is minimalistic and easy to follow, even without exercise. If you're interested in learning more about biohacking and advanced weight loss techniques, leave a comment, and I can make a video covering these methods in one place. Don't waste time. Losing weight is easy, much easier than finding your ideal diet or improving your gut flora. You've already taken a big step toward your well-being. Take care.